All right, now we're going to go glossary stuff.
The lore glossary. So Todd, this might surprise you, but in 50 years of D&D, we have created a lot of lore.
Have you?
Yes. I use the royal we. Many hundreds of thousands of people have come up with some of the most iconic elements of the game as we know it today, from iconic characters to iconic locations to iconic substances even. Who is Lolth? Who is Demogorgon? What is the Companions of the Hall? What is the Great Modron March? These are things that often get mentioned in adventures that we publish with no context.
Yeah.
Because we assume that the shared knowledge among D&D fans will fill in those gaps for you, or the internet will. But I think it's hugely helpful, particularly to a DM who hasn't had a whole lot of contact with the D&D lore or past editions of the game, to have a place they can go to find out more information about some of these very storied, very iconic people, places, and things.
It's also, if you are extremely experienced and you know all this stuff, you can find yourself forgetting these key things, like these key villains, these key characters, and you can grab one of these and bring them into your story.
Right, yes. Oh, I haven't thought about the Raven Queen in years, but this little entry on the Raven Queen has spurred an idea that's going to convince me to include her in my next campaign.
But if you want to be inspired and you want to learn D&D for the very first time and get a sense of how this universe kind of works, we've got these, paragraphs that describe these individuals within D&D.
And categories of creatures too, like what is an elder evil?
Yeah.
Well, there's not a clear answer to that, but it's a broad sort of loose category that we talk about in here.
Do you want to run through some of these?
Sure.
This is a very easy. We'll start with A. For Acererak.
Acererak, yes.
What and who is Acererak?
Well, Acererak was a very powerful wizard. He died.
Yeah.
But willingly, because he turned himself into a lich. And then his lich form deteriorated to the point where he became a demi-lich, which is kind of a lich whose body is dust, but whose skull remains. And the evil of Acererak is lodged in his skull. He had a particularly malign personality, and he didn't like adventurers very much, but he liked their souls. And so he would...
Tasty treat.
Exactly. So he would build these trap-ridden tombs, spread rumors that they're filled with treasure, to lure adventurers to the tombs in the hopes of plundering them, kill the adventurers in merciless ways, and feed on their souls, which sustained him. He's not a nice guy, but very clever, very crafty, and has created some iconic dungeons. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Acerek's first appearance was in the adventure Tomb of Horrors, which was written as a tournament scenario for one of the early Gen Con conventions.
And he has since reappeared in Tomb of Annihilation.
Yes.
Spoilers.
Died very quickly in that. We have an element that is very famous for D&D. It's Adamantine.
So Adamantine is here because we mention it casually in places in the Player's Handbook and in the Dungeon Master's Guide and never tell you what it is. So we made sure to tell you what it is.
And what is it?
It's one of the hardest substances in existence, a dark metal found in meteorites and extraordinary mineral veins.
Perfect.
See the adamantine armor and the adamantine weapon magic items in Chapter 7.
Who is Alustriel Silverhand?
You'll see her name is pronounced Alustriel.
Oh, okay. Who is... I'm going to murder a lot of names, so don't worry. Who is Alustriel Silverhand?
She is one of the seven sisters, powerful adventurers from the world of the Forgotten Realms, or more precisely the world of Toril in the Forgotten Realms setting. Among her many sisters is another famous Silverhand named Laeral, but Alustriel is not only one of the seven sisters, but she is also a chosen of Mystra, the god of magic, which means she's been invested with a tremendous amount of Mystra's power, making her even more powerful spellcaster. She counts folks like Elminster of Shadowdale as her dear friends.
And she's worked along with the Harpers and has befriended adventurers like Drizzt.
And you will see her in some of one of the pieces of art in the player's handbook in particular, I think, the one with Drizzt and the White Dragon. A hidden secret purpose of this lore glossary is to make sure that all the characters who are named that appear in art in the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, if you don't know who they are, this is where you go to find out.
Ashardalon. This is a famous red dragon.
Yes, from the 3rd edition era of the game. Ashardalon was created as the uber threat at the end of 3rd edition's adventure path.
And his name is seated right in the very beginning of that adventure path in
The Sunless Citadel.
Sunless Citadel.
Yes.
And then at the end of the adventure path, you find out he's taken up residence on the positive energy plane where he's devouring pre-incarnate souls before they can become incarnated in the material plane.
He's a very special red dragon.
Yeah, anyone who's recruiting a Baylor demon.
To serve as his heart,
Yeah.
basically.
I love everything Baba Yaga, and we have Baba Yaga in D&D. Who is Baba Yaga?
John Wick. No.
This is a point of contention. I like the John Wick films. I get angry every time I hear Baba Yaga.
Because it's synonymous with boogeyman, right?
Tangentially?
Yeah.
Like I always knew who Baba Yaga was, not the
Yeah.
boogeyman.
The D&D version of
Yeah.
Baba Yaga,
Yeah.
we characterize her as the mother of witches. She is a very powerful archfey, and probably best known for her abode, which gets around her chicken-legged hut.
Yes.
Which stomps about the plains, and so she has been around since the earliest days of D&D as
Right.
sort of this mythic figure. I'm sure more than a few warlocks count her as a patron. She's also the adoptive mother of another character who's in the lore glossary, a certain Tasha, aka Igwolf.
Bahamut.
Bahamut is the father of metallic dragons, one of the primordial dragons who, along with Tiamat, created the first world and tended it, populated it with dragons of all kinds. So he shows up a lot in lore about dragons. He's sometimes worshipped as a god by dragons and mortals alike,
On various worlds, he's known by other names.
like Paladin.
He's very fond of taking on, as many metallic dragons do, humanoid form and walking among us, sometimes with 7 golden canaries, which are actually gold dragons in disguise.
So watch out for those canaries.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You don't want to fight 7 gold dragons. I'm sorry.
What is the first world? Because we have touched upon this. We had Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and Fizban is, of course, Paladin in disguise.
So the first world is an idea, a myth in the worlds of D&D. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. That explains the origin of the material plane. Because the material plane is this infinite expanse of worlds. The myth says that Bahamut and Tiamat together created one. And when the gods saw it, they said, oh, that looks cool. Let's populate it with our people too. And there was conflict, and the world was shattered and destroyed into all these fragments that created not just one world, but an infinite variety of worlds.
I also appreciate in the lore glossary, the aliases are also listed. So they are pointing you to the right direction. Like if you are wondering who Fizban is, it'll point you in the direction of Paladin and Bahamut at the same time. You go into the Elder Evils here and explain, what are the Elder Evils for D&D?
It's sort of a catch-all term for weird, ancient, horrible, evil things.
That aren't demons or devils or any other categorized type. It's not like they belong to a family. These elder evils were not necessarily created by one another. They are just very powerful, sometimes very physically large and scary.
And kind of unknowable, like primordial, like they're either elemental or they're from the far realms.
Right.
And
Or
this
they
kind
have sort of
unknowing force.
like a Cthulhu-like alienness about them. One of my favorites, going all the way back, is Caius. The
worm that walks.
Thank you.
Yeah, the worm that walks.
Which is very Cthulhu-esque. It's this basically giant mountain of maggots imbued with intelligence, wearing a cloak, the world's biggest cloak. It's terrifying, and I think that's the root of all elder evils is there's something just sort of physically ghastly and unseemly about them, like they don't belong in this reality or any other reality.
Tharazdun is amongst these.
Yes.
The chained one.
And we have at times said, he's a god, he's a blah, but I think when you get to the root of the matter, he's not that knowable. And so he sort of falls into the elder evil category.
And that's what makes kind of all the elder evils fun and scary, because it's a different kind of fear. Like,
Yeah.
Because we're so good about ironing out who the gods are, who the demons are, who reports to who. This is the creepy space where like even perhaps gods fear to tread. And
Yes.
then Hadar, famously, this is right. Elder evils are ripe for like, hey, if you're looking to be, a great old one's warlock, you might have gotten your magic from this arena. Like Hadar is a good example.
Hadar is a dying star
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is sentient and evil.
Yeah. I love how broad and big that is. It opens up stories to be kind of, insane. I love anyone who's called the Elf Eater.
I had a feeling you might gravitate toward that one.
Yeah.
Ityak Orthiel, that is an old part of Forgotten Realms lore. The Dendar the Night Serpent and Ityak Orthiel the Elf Eater and Kezef the Chaos Hound. I feel like those three are the big elder evils in Forgotten Realms.
Mithral. Mithral has some very specific properties in D&D.
Yes, it's light and flexible, so things like Elven Chain are made out of it. Mithral armor. Again, like Adamantine, that Mithral is a substance that appears on in magic items and on tables like of portcullises. What is a Mithral portcullis? Turns out it's actually pretty easy to lift.
Who is the Raven Queen in D&D?
The Raven Queen is a mysterious figure who first appeared as a god of death in the 4th edition pantheon of gods. We had this idea that her name was a secret, that Vecna desperately wanted to learn as the god of secrets. But she's sort of this mysterious figure and so resonant that her mythology has lived on, where much of the rest of that era is forgotten. So she's connected to the Shadowkai now as a mysterious figure of the Shadowfell. It's not clear what her true nature is, whether she's a god or a fey being or a creature of pure shadow or what.
There are certain key figures here in this glossary that have the element like you may never know who the Raven Queen truly is, and that's the fun of the mystery.
Yeah.
Something as elemental as Baba Yaga is another good example of this. Baba Yaga feels like Baba Yaga was there before there were people breathing.
Right. Yes. And because these entries are meant to springboard imagination.
Yeah.
Get DMs thinking about ways they can use it. We want there to be some room in some cases for interpretation.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be my version of the Raven Queen or my version of Baba Yaga, or this is, thank you for this information on the Prince of Frost. I know exactly what I'm going to do with it. And it's going to be fun and different.
So who is the Prince of Frost?
The Prince of Frost is the son of the Summer Queen, but like all spoiled rich kids, he got a little too big for his britches and went off and tried to carve out his own domain, and has some deep thoughts about what his version of the world should be, and it's very different from most other people's vision of the world.
Considerably colder.
Considerably colder, as befits his icy demeanor. And so he wants to basically plunge the worlds around him into endless winter, and somehow that'll make him feel better. He was born out of the 4th edition era as well. That's another thing about this glossary, is we have pulled elements from throughout D&D's 50-year history.
I don't want to force you to pick a favorite, but what do you have in this? Have I not mentioned some of your favorite folks?
So there's an entry for the Heroes of the Realm. The so-called Heroes of the Realm are a group of young adventurers: Bobby, Diana, Eric, Hank, Presto, and Sheila, who traveled from Earth in the 1980s into a world in the D&D multiverse. Equipped with powerful magic items, they foiled the schemes of foes such as Venger and Tiamat, while seeking some means to return home. Eventually, as the heroes' mastery of adventuring skills increased, they discovered the secrets of traveling between worlds, though they still haven't found a way home. The Heroes of the Realm weren't the only kids transported from Earth to the worlds of D&D. Other young adventurers, including Nico the Cleric, are still exploring the vast D&D multiverse. So Nico is a character that we introduced in the art in the starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. We wanted to open up this idea that there are many of these unfortunate kids.
That does horrify me that kids are probably still being gobbled up.
Yeah, I probably would have kicked the crap out of Dungeon Master, I'm just saying.
Yeah, very accurate. But yeah, this is a great who's who of D&D. And again, just fantastic adventure hooks. Like you talk about Vlaakith, who Vlaakith is. People are very aware of Vlaakith now, especially from Baldur's Gate 3, the video game.
And it gives you kind of a very broad sense of what the D&D multiverse is like and just how varied and wacky it is, right? Because you've got Modrons and you've got Githyanki and you've got all this other crazy stuff to play with, but it shows just how elastic D&D is, how stretchable it is, that it can have this kind of variety.
It's extreme variety, but also a lot of identity. Nothing feels generic to me.
Everything is firmly planted, usually in some sort of conflict or place, so that you understand why it's there, why it exists, what it's up against, how you use it in the context of some other elements of the game. You mentioned Vlaakith, the Githyanki Lich Queen. You just have to read what's there, and that's a launching point to get you to find out more about Githyanki, which then makes you find out more about Githzerai and Mind Flayers, and suddenly you're talking about nautiloids and wild space and the astral plane, and it's sucking in all of these elements around this. Each of these is like its own little singularity that's drawing in other parts of D&D's legacy, and that is how DMs sort of unlock story potential.
I think the biggest threat to the D&D universe are Modrons.
You might be right. As innocent as that seems, every 289 years, they go off on a march around the outer planes, and nobody quite certain what the heck they're doing.
Yeah.
And if that didn't happen, or if that ever does, like, what's the deal there?
What happens if it's prevented?
Right. Yes. There are 17 outer planes if you include the Outlands. 289 years. That's 17 times 17. Like there's something going on.
Do you know what it is?
Do I know what it is?
Yes. Are you not telling us?
No. Make of that what you will, DMs.
Thank you so much for watching. Every week leading up to the brand new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we'll have new videos and premieres telling you more about the book. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, digital dragon art book, and the digital golden dragon mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.